And it is a divine thread, if you will, that weaves its way through the times when we're spiritually awake or when we're spiritually asleep. It's a thread that weaves its way through us in our lives, whether we're happy or sad, or whether we know exactly what we're doing in life or we haven't got a clue. Right? There is a divine order. There is a pattern. And we may not always see it or discern it. And one of the ways, though, that we begin to see this divine thread is through eternal listening, or by putting God first. That's another way to say it. So this month on our pilgrimage that we are pursuing this year, this month is called the Way of Walking, or Walking the Way. And we're going to be looking at walking and the symbolism behind walking as a spiritual practice. Now, the practice of walking is about more than just putting on your shoes and heading out the door. The practice of walking can actually be very deep and very profound. How many times have you had to take a walk just to go clear your head? Huh? Or just to, like, maybe you got mad and you needed to take a walk to cool down, right? When you walk, you notice things that you may not see while driving. I drive up and down Lake City Way all the time because I try to avoid I-5. And the few times that I've, like, dropped my car off to be fixed and then I've had, like, an hour or two, it's like, oh, I guess I'll walk down Lake City Way. And I'll find places that I didn't even know were there. It's like, oh, I didn't know this store was there. I didn't know this was there. Because, you know, when you're driving, things just kind of go by really fast. And even when you're bike riding, things can go by fast. But in walking, we stop and we notice things that we may not have seen, not only on the outside, but noticing on the inside as well. So one of the things that I'd like to do in the month of June, as June approaches, is have walking field trips. Now, what does that look like? It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be like, okay, we're only going to, like, do prayers as we walk, or we're just going to walk. And so if you're a walker and you would like some company on a walk, if you could sign up in the program table or come talk with me, and we're going to do the practice of walking. I know I've already asked Mariah, because Mariah is an incredible walker. She walks a lot. And it doesn't have to be far either, and you don't have to be very physically fit either. So just know, walking is walking. It's pretty easy and amazing. So Seattle has so many beautiful places to walk in, doesn't it? I mean, we've got, just to name a few, we've got the Burke-Gilman, we've got Lake Union, we've got Lincoln Park, Green Lake, Golden Gardens, the Arboretum, Lake Washington. Anybody else? What's your favorite walk? See? All these walking. And there are also mindful walks and walking as a meditation as well. So if you find that you're someone who finds it very difficult to sit and be still, you might consider a walking meditation. Jack Kornfield spoke about walking meditations this way. He said, one of the most useful and grounding ways of attending to our body is the practice of a walking meditation. Walking meditation is a simple and universal practice for developing calm, connectedness, and embodied awareness. The art of walking meditation is to learn to be aware as you walk, to use the natural movement of walking to cultivate mindfulness and wakeful presence. How many of you already do this as a spiritual practice? Yes, see, preaching to the choir. So the month of June, then, is about learning to listen and honor your own inner pace. To know thyself is to be authentic. Now, I know I've shared this story with you many times about walking the Camino, but it fits, you know. Walking the Camino fits with the month of the way of walking. And one of the things that I learned, and I know I've shared this with you before, but one of the things that I learned in walking the Camino is that you had to find your own pace. So when we started off with my girlfriends, we would all walk together and we would talk and it'd be great. But what I discovered is that some of us walked fast, others walked really slow, and some walked sort of medium. I was sort of medium slow. And so the people who wanted to walk fast held felt like they were being held up by those who were too slow, and then those that were too slow felt like they were being left behind. And so it could cause a problem. So we all decided that we had to walk at our own pace, because you can do it for an hour, a couple hours, a half a day, but day after day after day, the only way that we could walk was to find our own inner pace and walk with it. And then just make the agreement, I'll meet you in the next town, or not, you know? We'll see what happens. And we didn't bring cell phones. That was when, you know, the coverage overseas was still really high, so we didn't even have cell phones. And a couple of times we did lose each other, and one person we lost completely. They just ended up way, way back there, so we just kept on going. Anyway. So what was interesting about the walk is that every once in a while, someone would end up walking with me that matched my pace exactly. And it was great. And it didn't even matter if we spoke the same language, because I would have a walking partner for a while. And we would walk for the half a day, and it was like we were just perfectly in sync. And then that person would veer off and, you know, go to a town or go to lunch, and we'd lose them. And again, it was that inner pace and that inner listening that was really important. Now, the year that I walked the Camino was what's called a Jubilee year. And every 4 years, there's the Feast of St. James. And it's a Jubilee year, which means most of the people in Europe walk it then, particularly Spain and Italy. They walk the Camino in a Jubilee year. So when we started out in Pamplona, and you can start off in different places, when we started off in Pamplona, sometimes we were the only people on the road, and you'd be walking, you'd be all alone. Maybe you'd meet one person or three or a couple. But in order to be a pilgrim, you have to walk a minimum of 100 kilometers. And then when you get to Compostela, the end of the road, the big town, you show, because you had to get a stamp in each town. When you show your stamps, then they gave you a little certificate that says you were a pilgrim, which, you know, it's fun, right? And I've shared this before too, but most of the stamps that you had to get were not in churches, but in bars. So it seemed like it was like a big, long pub crawl through Spain, is what it seemed like. I was like, okay. So because it was a Jubilee year, most of the people from Italy and Spain were walking, and because they wanted to get their 100 kilometers, the most logical thing to do is to back up, find out the town that's 100 kilometers away, and start in that town, which was the town of Sarria. And so we were walking, and there's, you know, like I said, nobody or 5 people or somebody, not many on the road. And all of a sudden we hit the town of Sarria, and there were hundreds of people on the road walking. And of course they're passing and they're going, buen camino, have a good Camino. And the bikers from Italy would come flying by. And then it was like, because whenever we walked to the next town, you would have to find a place to stay, whether it be an albergue, in a bunk bed somewhere, in a monastery or a hotel. Well, guess what? When we get to the towns, every place was booked because everybody was now walking. And one night we actually spent the night in a stadium, in a soccer stadium, inside on the floor with 200 other people. And my girlfriend was so angry, she said, tomorrow morning we are getting up at 4 o'clock and we are leaving. No more leisurely getting up in the morning and then walking. We're walking seriously. And then it became a serious walk. It was always a serious walk. But again, it was in order to keep the pace, one had to acknowledge and honor how fast or slow you could go on your own. So in keeping with the Camino analogy, in life, we can match someone's pace for a while, but it won't last. You can seek to match your inner rhythm with someone else, but after a while, you need to set your own inner rhythm in order to hit some like internal reset button, yeah? Have you ever heard someone say, or maybe you've said it yourself, I've lost myself. I don't know what's happened, but I've lost myself. It's like, how do you lose yourself? You're right here, right? But when we say that, when we say I've lost myself, what do we mean? We mean I don't know what I'm wanting, I don't know where to go, I don't know what decision to make, I don't know what I like, I don't know what I don't like. And that can happen to us when we have small children and we're raising them and it consumes us, right? That you just totally forget what your likes and dislikes are. Or maybe you're taking care of an aging parent and that's consuming you. Or maybe you have a job that consumes you. And so it's like you lose touch with, wait a minute, who am I? Where am I? What is it that I want? And even sometimes an intense relationship can do that to us. And it's not to say that we don't compromise and we don't walk along the way with other people, but we have to stop and listen in order to see what that divine thread is that is moving in and through our lives. So by not listening or giving space to our own pace or voice, we lose ourselves. Now, one of the commandments says, "You shall have no other gods before you." Now, you can look at this scripture in a lot of different ways and say, well, they were talking about idols because the Israelites at that time wanted to go back to the old gods and goddesses. You shall have no other gods before me. But the truth is, having your children can become the gods before you. Your job can become the gods before you. A relationship can become the God before you, right? And so what's interesting is when you read the Old Testament in particular, really, it's like one story after another and one character after another who's kind of going along and doing something. And as soon as they don't put God first, everything seems to go wrong for them. They seem to hit these walls and different things happen to them. And I'll be covering that more as we move along in this theme this month. But when they put God first, then things seem to be more in alignment. And what does it mean to put God first? It means to be aware of that inner rhythm, doesn't it? It means to be aware of that inner pace and to be able to hear that inner voice. That's what it means to put no other gods before that Spirit of God that dwells within you. The story of Elijah is another example of hearing the voice. So Elijah was looking for God. In the book of 1 Kings, chapter 19, go forth and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord was passing by, and a great and strong wind was rending the mountain and breaking in pieces of rock before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle whisper. So of course we know in unity that God is in everything and in all events and beings. But when we look at it from a metaphysical perspective, God is not in the fire. How many fires do you spend in your life that you're putting out? It's like, this is happening, I gotta put that out. Or perhaps it's an emotional fire or an emotional storm that we get caught up in, and we can't hear the whisper, we can't hear the small voice because we're caught up in this drama and all this stuff that's going on. And again, particularly in the times that we are living today, it's important that we really learn to go beyond the earthquakes and the fires and to listen to that inner voice. So the way of walking can help us hear the voice of Spirit. It could also help us connect with the divine thread. And when we know that, we stand fully, completely, clearly in who we are. So, y'all know the story of David and Goliath, right? The shepherd boy who defeated the giant. And just as a little reminder of the story, you know, there's this Saul the king needed somebody to battle this Philistine and to battle Goliath. And nobody would do it because he would just wipe out whoever he came in contact with. He was a big, giant guy. And David, who's this young shepherd boy, said, I'll fight him. I'll fight him. And they're like, are you sure? Yeah, I can fight him. And so they go, all right. And so they immediately dress him up in armor. And they give him a big sword. And you get this picture of this skinny kid. And he is so weighted down with the armor and the sword that he can hardly lift. And he realizes that if he steps out in a battle in this way, he is done for. And he said, I can't wear this because I can't prove it. In other words, this is not authentic to me. This is not who I am. I am not this soldier who wears armor and carries a sword. I'm a shepherd boy. I've had a lot of experience with my slingshot and my rocks in killing animals that are going after my sheep. I know how to do this. And so when he stands before Goliath with just his slingshot, and Goliath says, "What are you, a dog that you came with sticks? Am I a dog that you came at me with sticks?" And of course, you know the story. He swings the slingshot right between the eyes and kills Goliath. Again, when we look at the story metaphysically, is there a giant that is in front of you right now? Do you have a giant of a problem that may be facing you that you don't know how to face right now? And maybe conventional wisdom is saying, this is how you do it. You know, as conventional wisdom told David that he had to put on the armor and carry the sword. Conventional wisdom may have it figured out for you, but the story tells us that the way that we defeat these obstacles that are in our life is to know ourselves, to prove ourselves, if you will, right? To stand in that thread that continues through our life, to stand in our authenticity, in our strengths, to defeat, to solve anything that may be before us. You have within you all that you need. That's what the story of David is telling us. So yesterday was the wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Anybody get up in the middle of the night and watch it? Come on, tell the truth. Or you could watch it, whatever. So the question is why is it such a big deal? You know, why is it important? Why does it even matter? And I think it matters because it's about love, right? And it's a story that we can all relate to. We can all relate to maybe going to the wedding, to meeting the new in-laws, to having the family. And it matters because, you know, for a day, maybe you can buy into a fairy tale, right? We see how these fairy tales usually work out, but, you know, you can buy into a fairy tale. And it matters because there are good things that happen in the world. And sometimes we get so lost in all the things that are happening. And, you know, we had another shooting in Texas this week, the stuff that's going on in Gaza, the stuff that the volcano, the lava in Hawaii. You know, there's just so much that it's just great to stop for a moment and to celebrate something good in life, to celebrate the wedding. But it also matters because it was a step forward for the royal family. And there are, just as there are divine threads that are in our own lives that carry us through a pattern, you know, a gift that's always there and carries us through, so there are threads throughout history. You know, and it may seem like we lose the thread and we fall back and it's, you know, we don't have it, but the truth is, these threads continue and they move us forward. And we saw it in the royal wedding with Meghan Markle, you know, being half African American and her mom there, and the Bishop Curry given his preacher speech, right? That American preacher speech, and the choir sang, a gospel choir sang, "Stand by Me." And it was just so different. And yet the same, they honored their traditions as well. And what I saw there was Prince Harry and Meghan being like David and saying, okay, so the conventional wisdom would be, we need to do it this way. But that's not who we are. This is who we are, and this is what we're bringing to the world right now, and this is what we want our wedding to reflect. And so we see that threads of movement forward, and sometimes it may seem so slow, and sometimes it may seem like it's not happening, but it's happening. It's happening. It's moving forward. So where are you right now in your life? Have you lost yourself? Or do you know who you are? So wherever you are, know that if in this moment you may be feeling lost, that you're not alone, that all of us go through these phases and stages of life. But the way that we reconnect, it's not in the earthquake, it's not in the fire, it's not in the wind, it's in the whisper. And how do you find that thread? How do you find the whisper? One of the ways you do it is by walking. Just walking. No agenda, just walking and being still and picking up that inner thread. So as we close this talk today, I want to focus on prayer. There's so many prayers that we need to send out. There are so many prayers and so many people that we need to hold in our love this morning, that I invite you to just prepare yourself for a moment of prayer and of silence. And just know that there's a thread that carries you from childhood to old age. And even imagine that you can see it, this divine thread that is carrying you from childhood to old age. For there is a divine pattern in your life. There is an order, whether you are seeing it or not. You are not here by accident. And so we bless love. We bless the marriage of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. We bless the celebration of love. And we bless all who are affected by the lava, by the volcano in Hawaii. All the lives that are being shifted and changed and moved as the earth adjusts itself. Particularly if you know someone in particular who's affected by this, speak their name now.
Pray for my mom, Teddy Roslin, and she's still alive and kicking.
And so, we also hold the students and the families in Texas who were injured. We bless those who have made their transitions. We bless the families, and we hold that we wake up and make changes and put feet on our prayers. We bless the conflict in Gaza and all those who were wounded, all those who lost their lives there. That peace may reign. May our footsteps be blessed, whether we walk fast or slow or medium. In whatever way you walk, whatever pace you take, it is perfect for you. And for this awareness, and in the name and through the power of the living Spirit of truth, we say thank you and amen.